Thank you for the opportunity of being with you today. I appreciate the invitation from Amanda to join you. Amanda and I have worked together for a long time, and a part of that period has also coincided with my engagement with TI. I don't know whether you remember, Amanda, when I was working at World Vision 20 odd years ago, when TI was first founded in 1993, and at that time I was in charge of responsible for the advocacy and public policy work of World Vision Australia. And one of my colleagues introduced me to Isabel Blackett, who was a Christian engineer working in sanitation engineering in Uganda, who'd been working there several years and had been confronted the problem of corruption undermining their efforts to really deliver what the World Bank was intending to do in developing this water and sanitation systems for the people of Uganda, and because of the extent of corruption in that place. And we heard about the foundation of TI, and it was through Isabel's efforts that a chapter in Australia was formed. Today, 21 years later, Australia is part of a global movement of more than 120 chapters around the world, headquarters in Berlin. And over that period, we've sought to address the issues that confronted the founders of TI. Peter Eigen, one of those who joined with his colleagues who formerly worked at the World Bank and the Commonwealth Secretariat to found the movement 20 odd years ago, did so because as a regional director for the World Bank in Kenya at the time, he was challenged that he couldn't challenge the sovereignty of the government of Kenya, despite the fact that the efforts that he was seen being made to relieve poverty in Kenya were being undermined by the corruption of the presidential regime at that time. So when he left the bank, he decided he had to move outside that space and create this people's movement, this movement of Transparency International. Since that time, TI has raised the awareness of the risks of corruption and worked with others to assure the establishment of a UN Convention Against Corruption, a regional OECD Convention on Foreign Bribery, as well as raising awareness through the publication of the analysis of the impact of corruption and the kind of corruption that exists around the world. It's interesting today that, and the other thing I should say is that early at that time I met Jim Wolfensohn, who was then president of the World Bank, who I asked him at the time in 1995, soon after he was appointed as president, whether he'd heard of Transparency International. He said, yes, I do. I've been working with Peter Eigen. But I was told when I was first appointed to the bank, don't mention the C word. Today, the change has taken place, and last year, in the last couple of years, the BBC has recognised that corruption is recognised as the biggest challenge facing the global community, and many of our business leaders recognise that. When we start, I'm a member of the C20 group and have been working on the governance stream with other colleagues from the C20, and we're looking forward to the opportunity of engaging with the leaders at the end of the week and to seeing what commitments they do make in their communique, particularly around this issue of the anti-corruption work of the G20. We also work closely with the B20, and TI is formally a member of the B20 anti-corruption working group as well as the C20, so we bridge both camps, and that's the way that TI has worked over the years to try to work, as well as raising awareness about corruption, also tried to work with governments, with business, with civil society to bring together in a multi-stakeholder approach efforts to build the integrity of the public sector, the private sector, and to engage and encourage civil society to hold both to account for their responsibilities to act with integrity. The B20, in its work on anti-corruption this year, was slow to start. In the beginning, the four pillars of the B20 were four task forces that you saw there, and they were resistant to establish, as it had happened in previous years, an anti-corruption task force. Fortunately, we were able to persuade them that this was important. Their colleagues from international business stressed to the Australian leadership that this was an issue that needed to be addressed if the goals of the Australian government of 2% economic growth beyond the norm were to be achieved, then the risks of corruption had to be addressed. And they recognised that if corruption were an industry, it would be the world's third largest, costing 5% of the world's GDP at $3 trillion a year. And in addition to that, the Global Financial Integrity recognised that a further $1 trillion leaks out of developing countries through illicit financial flows. TI's Bribe Payers Index. TI publishes a number of indices in analysing corruption. The Bribe Payers Index looks at the supply side of corruption. 70% of respondents in the last survey in 15 G20 countries believe they had lost business due to corrupt practices. In addition, corruption leads to reluctance to invest. PricewaterhouseCoopers, in a survey of 390 senior business leaders, found that 45% said that the risks of proposed by corruption led them to not enter a market or to miss out on a business opportunity. You cannot talk about economic growth and stability without talking about corruption. Corruption wreaks havoc on economies by manipulating bidding and contracting processes and undermining the level playing field. TI believes that the G20 must establish a cleaner, fairer financial system. The C20 is focusing that while we're talking about economic growth, we have to ensure that that growth is inclusive. Tackling poverty and inequality must be part of the agenda for the G20. Unfortunately, the Australian government hasn't picked up a focus that did emerge in the Russian presidency on inclusive growth. The Global Corruption Barometer, another one of those analytical tools that TI uses, found last year that 1 in 4 people had paid a bribe to access a service. Public procurement projects are often undermined by corruption. As a consequence, bridges are not built, shoddy hospitals and schools are built, buildings collapse when natural disasters occur or when human-caused disasters can occur, as in factory fires in Bangladesh as a consequence of corruption. So that the higher the levels of corruption, the greater risk there are for citizens to be able to access the services to which they're entitled. These are the issues that we believe that the leaders should be considering at this time. And there are a number of issues that I just say briefly that we're hoping to see in the response. We've been working with the Anti-Corruption Working Group of the G20 during this year, and we're looking for a firm, clear action plan that will address these issues over the next couple of years, including transparency of the beneficial ownership of companies to ensure the end of company secrecy, a stronger focus on implementing the foreign bribery legislation, which a number of the countries of the G20 are members of the OECD and therefore signatories to the OECD Convention. The G20 brings in other non-OECD countries, and together we're asking the OECD to work with the G20 to ensure the focus on prevention of the prosecution for corruption is undertaken, and as well focusing on whistleblower protection and public procurement issues are further dimensions of what TI would like to see in the new action plan, and we're hoping we're going to get there. So thank you very much, and sorry for the longer time.